Hi friends! So I recently picked up Valorant again despite the fact that it's probably a bad idea for me. For those who are not familiar, Valorant is a PvP team-based first-person shooter game where the objective is to plant and detonate a spike at specific locations, or prevent that from happening, depending which side team you're on. Am I good at it? No. But do I get to play with all my friends and have a fun, wholesome time doing so? Also no. But you know, sometimes when you're not busy being ooh, you gotta do the pew pew to de-stress. And then get stressed again when you miss your shots because obviously it was my internet's fault that I died. Totally not my own aim or anything. Anyways, if you've been following me on other platforms, you also know that I've been playing a lot of Genshin Impact ever since it launched back in the fall of 2020. On top of Osu and whatever other junk I do, these are probably the main set of games I play / sort of play somewhat currently, maybe. So I thought, obviously, no one is asking for this, so I gotta make a crisscross flip-flop paddywhack hot crust buns of these two games. And originally I was going to do more characters than shown here, but I just get bored of drawings really fast and I move on to create 10 million more works in progress. Like, I feel like Clip Studio Paint just sheds a single tear every time I open a new canvas without finishing something, and it just collects in this massive pool that's gonna one day flood and kill me. Anyways, intro over, let's get started. Starting at the Genshin to Valorant side, you'll see I start with some sketches with Keqing, Xiao, and Amber, but Amber didn't make the final cut to the final drawing because having to draw more than two characters is just too overwhelming. Keqing is the Yuhang of the keqing, whatever that means. Her abilities are electro-related and she has very quick attacks. Zipping here and there with her elemental burst and even her elemental skill lets her quickly teleport from one location to another. Not that this translates the same way to Valorant because instead of certain characters being binded to certain weapon types, in this case Keqing uses swords, every playable character in Valorant uses guns, and it just depends on which gun you buy at the beginning of the round. They're accessible to everyone. However, every Valorant agent does have their own special abilities and unique to themselves. Though limited in use, I would think that Keqing would retain some electro properties, like how Phoenix is very fire-based, and her quick speeds and teleport abilities make her almost a cross between some abilities that Jett and Yoru have. Xiao's an edgy short king with animo abilities that let him dash into enemies and pogo stick on top of them. Basically, he just bashes his head against the problem. That's all you really need to know. I thought a little about what Valorant Keqing's abilities would be based on her abilities in Genshin, though you'll see they're pretty uncreative and they may be either stupid or too useful for evasion, you know, one or the other end of the spectrum here. Her C ability would be maybe a lightning flash, which is kind of what it sounds like. She shoots out a long range flash and it blinds the enemies and possibly teammates as well. Q would be called Stiletto. It's a low HP damage beacon that covers a small ground area. E would be Blink. It would be either a short distance teleportation or a couple second invisibility, nothing really long, just to help with evasion. Her ult would be Afterimage. Because Keqing's ult in Genshin has her zipping around with a lot of almost like clones of her as she's moving really fast. I would imagine that this ult would increase her movement speed and briefly show her up on multiple spots at once to kind of confuse the enemy of her true exact position. I hadn't really thought about possible Xiao's abilities because I was mostly just drawing Keqing. Honestly, if we're basing it on his Genshin abilities, some of them are pretty much just gonna look like Jett's, like jumping, dashing, things like that. On the Valorant to Genshin side, I only drew Jett. I've drawn Jett before in a slightly more serious way. Jett is a duelist character whose abilities lets her dash quickly, glide in the air, throw short-lived smokes, and jump up high. This means she's pretty mobile character, and TBH, sometimes it's stressful against her because not only do you have to watch the normal ground angles, but now you have to be afraid of her coming out of the air in a surprise attack. Her ultimate ability is a set of knives that she can throw and deal big damage to enemies. In my recreation of her in the Genshin universe, I think the obvious choice was to go with Animo as her vision. Much of her existing character abilities are so fluid, air-related themes, so it only makes sense to stick with that for consistency. The weapon I chose for Jett in Genshin would be the bow and arrow. My reasoning for this is that she is very light on her feet, super mobile, and would require a fairly lightweight weapon of choice, so definitely not like a claymore or something. For her elemental skill, in Valorant, Jett's regular skills don't actually have any damage output for the most part. They're more for mobility and evasion, so it's going to be a bit different in Genshin, since we generally want some ability that either causes damage or offers some sort of support ability, like protection or healing, stat enhancement, things like that. Every character has such a skill in Genshin Impact. I don't think Jett would have like a shield or healing ability. That doesn't really align with her playstyle and theming. Like I may have mentioned earlier, Xiao's dash and Jett's dash abilities are very similar, and if we want to be as similar as possible, Jett's elemental skill would basically be Xiao's. To reflect the Valorant Jett's abilities, I'd imagine for her elemental burst, she fires homing daggers at the target, or something to that effect. In Valorant, you still have to rely on your own aim to make sure your shots land, but given some of the auto-targeting mechanisms in Genshin, I think it's fair to think that there would be auto-aim for this. Another sketch that didn't make it out of my own laziness was Killjoy, a German engineer whose abilities includes a lot of utilities like turrets, grenades, and lockdown device. I was imagining that her German roots would place her in the Mondstadt region, and she would maybe be a catalyst user because of, lol character, very smart. She'd probably be Electro Geo, and elemental skill would probably be similar to Fischl's Oz, calling back to her turret, but it'd be more mechanical. Her burst would likely be something to mirror her Valorant ult, probably an AoE damage attack that locks the enemies in the region and disables their ability to deal damage for a short amount of time. Anyways, thanks so much for watching. If you play both games, what do you think about these designs? Or possibly if you want to see others. If you want to see what I'm up to these days, feel free to follow me on my other social media platforms. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!